Dear audience, students and scholars, here I am Dr. Amjad Ali. In this video, we will learn about the science of macroeconomics. Dear scholars, to appreciate the importance of macroeconomics, you need only read the newspaper or listen to the news every day. You can see headlines such as income growth, the rise and fall of stock exchange price, inflation rate, unemployment rate. These macroeconomic events may seem abstract, but they touch all of our lives. Business executive forecast the demand for their product must guess how fast consumer income will grow. Senior citizens living on a fixed income wonder how fast prices will rise. Recent college graduate looking for a job hope that the economy will boom and the firm will hire more employees, because the state of the economy affects everyone. So macroeconomic issues play a central role in national political debates. Voters are aware of how the economy is doing, and they know that the government policy can affect the economy in a powerful way. As a result, the popularity of the cabinet, president, or prime minister often rise when economy is doing well and falls when it is doing poorly. So here we have the main concern, what macroeconomists study. Dear scholars, as we know that macroeconomics is the study of economy as a whole. It attempts to answer some of the given related question, that why has some countries experienced rapid growth in income over the past century while others stay stuck in poverty. Why do some countries have a high rate of inflation while others maintain stable price? Why do all countries experience recession and depression during periods of falling incomes and rising unemployment? And how can government policy reduce the frequency and severity of these episodes? Macroeconomic issues are also centered to the world politics, and if you read international news, you will quickly start thinking about macroeconomic questions like, should China maintain a stable exchange rate against the US dollar? Why the United States running a large trade deficit, and how can poor nations raise their standard of living? Whenever the world leaders gather any international event, they also try to answer or find the solution of these questions. Dear scholar, keep in mind that to be sure that macroeconomics is a young and imperfect science. The macroeconomist's ability to predict the future course of economic events is no better than the meteorologist's ability to predict next month's weather. But as you will see that macroeconomists know quite a lot about how economies work. This knowledge is useful both for explaining economic events and for formulating economic theory. Although the job for making economic policy belongs to world leader, the job of explaining the working of the economy as a whole falls in the pocket of macroeconomists. So towards this end, macroeconomists collect data on income, price, unemployment, and many other variables from different periods and different countries, and then they attempt to formulate general theories and to explain this data. So macroeconomics history is not a simple story, but it provides a rich motivation for economic theory. While the basic principles of macroeconomics do not change from decade to decade, and the economist must apply these principles with flexibility and creativity to meet changing circumstances. How economists think? Economists often study political charged issues, but they try to address these issues with a scientific objectivity. Like any science, economics has its own set of tools, terminology, data, and a way of thinking that can seem foreign and mysterious to the layman. The best way to become familiar with these tools is to practice using them, and the macroeconomic course, any book of macroeconomic will afford you to ample opportunity to understand the language and terminology of macroeconomics. theory as a model building. You know that young children learn much about the world around them by playing with the tool versions of the real object. For instance, they often put together models of the car, trains, or planes. These models are far from the realistic, but the model builders learns a lot from these models. These models illustrate the essence of the real object. It is a design to the resemble of the real object. So economists use model to understand the real world, but an economist model is a more likely to be made of symbols and equations than plastic and glue. Economists build their toys economy to help explain economic variables such as GDP, inflation, and unemployment. Economic models illustrate often in a mathematical term the relationship among the variables. Models are useful because they help us to dispense with irrelevant detail and to focus on underlying connection. And many economists consider model building as a fun. So models have two kinds of variable: endogenous variable and exogenous variable. When we are talking about the endogenous variables, are those variables that a model tries to explain, and exogenous variables are those variables that model takes as a given. So the purpose of a model is to show how the exogenous variable affect the endogenous variable. In other words, exogenous variable come from outside the model and serve as the model's input, whereas endogenous variable are determined with the model and are the model's output. When we are talking about how model work, here we have a model here. Exogenous variables are impacting endogenous variable. So models are simplified theories that show the key relationship among economic variables. Exogenous variables are those that come from outside the model. The endogenous variables are those variables that models try to explain. The model show how change in endogenous variables are affect the endogenous variable. So technically exogenous variables are affecting our endogenous variable. Using function to express relationship among variables, all economic model express relationship among economic variables. Often these relationships are expressed as a function. As a function is a mathematical concept that show how one variable depends on a set of other variables. For example, in the model of pizza market, we said that quantity of a pizza demanded depends on the price of a pizza and on an aggregate income. To express this, we use the function notation to write as quantity demand is function of price of pizza and aggregate income. This equation says that the quantity of pizza demanded is a function of the price of pizza and aggregate income. In function notation, the variable preceding the parenthesis denote that function. In case here we have D is a notation for the function. So if we know that more about the pizza market, we could have a numerical formulation for the quantity of pizza demanded. Like for example, we might be able to write at QD is equal to 60 minus 10p plus 2y, and in case the demand function become as function py, quantity demanded of pizza, price of pizza, and income is equal to 60 plus minus 10p plus 2y. So for any price of pizza and aggregate income, this function gives the corresponding quantity of pizza demanded. For example, if the aggregate income is $10 and the price of pizza is $2, then the quantity of pizza demanded is 60 pies, and if price of pizza rises to $3, the quantity of pizza demanded falls to 50 pies, and function notation allow us to express the general idea that variables are related even when we do not have enough information to indicate the precise numerical relationship. For example, we might know that the quantity of pizza demanded falls when the price rises from $2 to $3, but we might know how much it fall. In this case, functional notation is useful. As long as we know that a relationship among variables exists, we can express that relationship by using functional notations. The art in economics is in judging when a simplifying assumption clarifies our thinking and when it misleads us. Simplification is a necessary part of building a useful model. Any model construct to be completely realistic would be too complicated for anyone to understand, yet models lead to incorrect conclusion if they assume any feat and any features of the economy that are crucial to the issue at hand. And economic modeling therefore requires a care and a common sense at the same time. The use of multiple models. Macroeconomists study many facts of the economy. For example, they examine the role of saving in economic growth, the impact of minimum wage laws on unemployment, the effect of inflation on interest rates, and the influence of trade policy on the trade balance and exchange rate. Economists use models to address all of these issues, but no single model can answer every question. Just as a carpenter uses different tools for different tasks, economists use different models to explain different economic phenomenon. Students of macroeconomics therefore must keep in mind that there is no single correct model that always applicable. Instead, there are many models, each of which is useful for shedding light on a different fact of the economy. The field of macroeconomics is like a Swiss Army knife, a set of complementary that distinct tools that can be applied in different ways in a different circumstances. Remember that a model is only as good as its assumption, and that an assumption that is useful for some purpose may be misleading for the others. When using a model to address a question, the economist must keep in mind the underlying assumption and judge whether they are reasonable for studying the matter at hand. Like here we have a main assumption like price of flexible versus sticky price. Economists normally presume that the price of a good or a service move quickly to bringing quantity supplied and quantity demanded into balance. So in other words, they assume that markets are normally in equilibrium, so the price of any good or service is found where the price and demand curve intersect. This assumption is called market clearing, and it is a central to the model of any competitive market. For answering most questions, economists use market clearing models, yet the assumptions of continuous market clearing is not entirely realistic. For market to clear, continuous price must adjust instantly to change in supply and demand. In fact, many wages and price adjust slowly. Labor contracts often set wage for up to 3 years. Many firms leave their product price at the same for long periods of time. For example, magazine publishers typically change their price after 3 to 4 years. Uh, So, although market clearing models assume that all wages and price are flexible, in the real world, some wages and price are sticky. The apparent stickiness of the price does not make market clearing models useless. After all, prices are not stick forever. Eventually they adjust to change in supply and demand. Market creating models might not describe the economy at every instant, but they do describe the equilibrium towards with the economy or with the economy at a real situation. Therefore, most macroeconomists believe that price flexibility is a good assumption for studying long-run issues such as the growth in a real GDP that we observe from decade to decade. For studying the short-run issues such as year-to-year fluctuation in real GDP and unemployment, the assumption of flexible price is less applicable. Over the short-run periods, many prices in the economy are fixed and at a predetermined level. Therefore, most macroeconomists believe that price stickiness is a better assumption for studying the short-term behavior of the economy. Microeconomic thinking and macroeconomic model. As we know that microeconomic is the study of how household and firms make decisions and how these decision makers interact in the marketplace. A central principle of microeconomic is that household and firms optimize. They do the best they can for themselves given their objectives and the constraints they face. In microeconomic models, households choose their purchases to maximize their level of satisfaction, which economists call utility, and firms make production decisions to maximize their profits. So economy-wide events arises from the interaction of many households and firms. Macroeconomics and microeconomics are indivisibly linked or interlinked. When we study the economy as a whole, we must consider the decision of individual economic actor. For example, to understand what determines total consumer spending, we must think about a family deciding how much to spend today and how much to save for the future. To understand what determines total investment spending, we must think about a firm deciding whether to build a new factory, because aggregate variables are the sum of the variables describing many individual decisions. Macroeconomic theory rests on microeconomic foundations. So here is the summary of the whole discussion, how science of macroeconomics work. Macroeconomics is the study of the economy as a whole, including growth in incomes, changes in price, and the rate of unemployment. Macroeconomists attempt both to explain economic events and to devise policies to improve economic performance. To understand the economy, economists use model theories and that simplify reality in order to reveal how exogenous variable influence endogenous variable. The art in the science of economics is in judging whether a model captured the important economic relationship for the matter at hand, because no single model can answer all questions. Macroeconomists use different models to look at different issues or situations. A key feature of macroeconomic model is whether it assumes that prices are flexible or sticky. According to most macroeconomists, models with flexible price describe the economy in the long run, whereas models with a sticky price offer a better description of the economy in the short run. Microeconomics is the study of how firm and individual make decisions and how these decision makers interact, because macroeconomic events arise from many microeconomic interaction. All macroeconomic model must be consistent with microeconomic foundation, even if those foundations are only implicit. So this is all about the science of macroeconomic. So see you with another video. Ciao.